Hey Bill, pull this thing out so we can see how it works. All right. So these forced air furnaces are not very complex, but there are a number of safety devices and switches that, you know, if they go bad, if they fail, it shuts this thing down pretty quick.
Yeah, like I said before, it's about 100% safe as long as you keep track of it, as long as everything is serviced. And so let me go over the components here real quick. For thermostat sets it in motion, blower wheel turns.
Right, now this blower wheel has to get up to a certain velocity before it'll engage the sail switch. And show the sail switch.
Absolutely, and this is one of the big safety features. You can see there's a lever here with a little paddle inside that takes a certain RPM.
Right, so once that wind is blowing at a certain volume, then the paddle comes up and engages the switch. The switch takes us to the circuit board and opens up the gas valve.
Let me turn it here so that once the sail switch is engaged, and the power runs through the sail switch to the limit switch here. Another safety device, the limit switch, if it overheats or even during a long heating process, the limit switch is going to kick in and out to maintain a certain temperature throughout the combustion chamber.
That's right. So if we don't have enough airflow through here, temperature rises in here, inside this box here, that limit switch is going to shut this thing down.
And if the fan does start to go bad, or if you're out in the desert sometime camping and your batteries start to go down, the blower wheel slows down. Once it gets to a certain RPM, the sail switch lets go, turns the gas off, and there you get your safety.
Most of the furnace manufacturers will tell you that the big majority of these things that come back under warranty work fine. It's just that there was not enough DC voltage to make the fan work fast enough, and therefore it didn't flow. The fuel didn't burn, it didn't work, and so basically you have to have batteries. You have to 10.5 volts. I mean, once you get to 10.5 volts, you're done.
Yeah, and these things they're a little bit rough on the batteries. It's a large blower wheel and a large motor, and it'll take the battery down pretty quick, especially if your batteries are old.
That's correct. So these things are also all controlled by a circuit board. And let's look a little bit at this one here.
This is one of the newer boards. They've evolved quite a bit over the years. This is what they call a fan control board. It actually has a built-in delay, so when the thermostat does shut off, it'll keep the blower motor running for approximately 2 minutes until it cools the combustion chamber down.
That's
So
correct.
the board pretty much does everything. Once the voltage goes through the limit switch to the board opens the gas valve, ignition just an instant before the gas valve, and it also shuts it down.
So basically, if you are experiencing some kind of a problem, first thing to look for is voltage. And then after we look at voltage, then where are we going to go?
Yeah, and then we can actually show you how to do this if we hook it up and bench test it.
Let's get this thing running.
Okay.
All right. In order to bench test the forced air furnace, the first thing we're going to do is hook up a couple leads to the pigtail that goes into the furnace. Once we do that, then we're going to plug in that pigtail to the furnace, and then we're going to hook up those leads to the battery. The next step is to hook up a voltmeter, and what we're going to do is we're going to ground the negative lead to the battery, and then we're going to hook up the positive lead to one of the positive leads that go to the gas valve. Then what you're going to do is you're going to ground a test light to the ground block on the furnace itself, and then you're going to hook up the clip onto the red wire that goes to the sail switch. Because we left the thermostat in the rig, we're going to jumper these two blue wires, so that'll tell the furnace to come on. The fan comes on very quickly, and when the test light illuminates, you know that the sail switch is now working. Once we've proven that the sail switch is working, then we know in about 18 seconds we're going to have power to the gas valve. Here we've confirmed that we have power to the gas valve, and momentarily we should have ignition. If that doesn't happen, now we go back and we check the limit switch. Using the test light, we can also confirm that we have power that's going through the limit switch. Our next step, after we've confirmed that we have the limit switch working, is to check for power at the circuit board itself. If for some reason we still don't have ignition, we're going to want to check the electrode. Before we do that, we want to disconnect the power. Okay, then we're going to unscrew it from the body of the furnace itself. We want to check for corrosion, make sure the tips are not broken. And then once we've done that, we want to check for the air gap. Now that should be 1/8 of an inch plus or minus 1/16 of an inch. An easy way to do that is to use an 1/8 inch drill bit to check it.
Some forced air furnaces by Suburban are accessible from the outside, behind this panel here. Now remember, this is the intake and this is the exhaust, and the exhaust gets very hot. So don't do this while it's running or has recently been running. So let's get this cover off. I'm going to put this in here so I don't lose it. Okay. Now this one's a little tougher than some. Okay, so you can see we've got the circuit board here. Behind this cover is the blower wheel. And actually the gas valve is kind of behind this unit here, not quite as accessible as we've seen before. These wires lead to the sales switch and the limit switch, so if you need to test those, you can do that with these wires. Now, let's go inside and I'll show you some of the ductwork and show you how this keeps you warm. So here we have the back side of the forced air furnace, the Suburban model that we looked at from the outside. Now I just want to mention real quick that the limit switch that we talked about before is right behind this cover here. Now as you can see, the ducting goes along the length of the rig to heat the entire rig and comes out these round registers over there. Now here is the most important thing about a forced air furnace. You must follow the manufacturer's required minimum number of ducts coming off the unit. This is the type of ducting attached to most forced air furnaces in your typical RV. Now, although it is basically reinforced, it can still be punctured or torn. So there's many different ways to fix this problem, but the easiest way is with this beauty right here. This is aluminum tape. You can find it at most home improvement stores, and all you're gonna do is tape it up. Now don't just rip a piece off and slap it on the top there because it'll probably blow off with the force of the air. So what you do, take the tape, peel back a bit. Oh, first, make sure you stretch it out as far as you can. There you go. Now, you're gonna be by yourself because this is probably gonna be done in a very small area. So stretch it out as best you can, peel back the tape, and then just keep pulling it as you go around. And then it just rips off. It's not very pretty, but hey, it works.
Hey Bill, you know, I think that a forced air furnace is probably the most overlooked appliance when it comes to maintenance and annual inspections. I mean, everyone has one, they know it works, they're happy that they have heat, but I think they kind of take it for granted.
They're kind of buried in a cabinet somewhere, and you just don't,
Exactly.
they're like out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly, they're certainly not accessible, but I still think at least once a year, get your flashlight out and check out a bunch of different parts of this furnace.
Absolutely, I agree.
So the first thing I would do is I take the flashlight and hopefully I'd have some access, and I get down here and I look inside and I make sure that we don't have a bunch of nicotine from smokers if there's smokers in the rig, and a lot of lint that piles up inside there. Make sure that the connections are corrosion free.
Yeah, the circuit boards can get so covered with dirt and
Right.
dust that
Exactly.
they probably need to be cleaned as well.
Right, and you know, you can have a mouse that lives in this thing, and
used to live
in there. The mice love the wire. I guess the casing must be good protein or something for these rodents,
Yeah,
but they love to eat it.
I've never tried it personally.
I don't think they're very tasty, but I guess they like them. So anyway, the next thing I would do is I'd look inside here. I'd make sure that the intake and exhaust free of mud daubers, birds' nests, or anything else that can pile in there during the year, especially if it's been in storage for a long time.
Yeah, even just leaves or anything that gets in there, make sure that it's clear because you don't want a fire, and obviously it won't work if it really gets clogged up.
An important part of furnace maintenance is making sure your air intake and exhausts are clear. The best way to do that is just with a visual check. Take a flashlight, make sure it's not running because it gets awfully hot down there, and just shine it in and see if there's anything in there. And we've got something in the exhaust. Best thing to use, I've found, is a pair of long needle nose pliers. If it goes further back than these will reach, just get yourself a clothes hanger. See, I've put a little hook in the end there to grab on to whatever it is. We're going to use these for today. Looks like we had a leaf inside there. Now let's check the air intake. Yep, something in there as well. What is that? A spider? Really, guys? I so knew this was fake.
You get into the squirrel cage, if you take a look over here, which, you know, we look at the blower here, you've got a lot of area in there that could be piled up with leaves and nests and all kinds of stuff.
And just lint. Over the years, I've seen so much lint in there that it actually throws the wheel off balance.
Just like a dryer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, and then the other thing that I like to look at is the ducting, because the ducting is like, that's your distribution center for the heat. And if it's not intact, you're not going to get, you know, efficient heating. And these things are not that efficient to begin with.
No, they're 36%, somewhere around there. And if you subtract another 10%, then you don't have anything.
You have a ton of heat loss. A number of manufacturers kind of like just stuff on the ducting here right onto these collars.
Yeah, these collars, they'll just slide right on here. If they're, a lot of them won't use a hose clamp. They'll maybe put a little duct tape on there. It dries out over the years.
And
the hose clamp is the best. If they don't have them on there, well, you could do that, but check to make sure they're not. I mean, if they're halfway off there, you can see what you're going to lose.
You lose a lot of efficiency, and it's not like a stationary home. A lot of homes use duct tape, but here, this thing's bouncing around all the time. Many
the
of
home
us
never leaves the yard.
It doesn't. No, many of us throw stuff on top of the ducting, and it can kink it, it can move it, it can bend it, can put holes in it, and then you have a distribution problem. Again, we're looking at ultimate efficiency because you want to make sure that you have enough heat and it's distributed properly throughout all the nooks and crannies in your rig. You don't want cold spots.
And the registers too, of course. I mean, they can fall off as well, then you're just heating your cabinet.
Exactly,
So,
and don't we have to look to make sure that nothing's growing in the register there? We don't have stuff that's piled into, you know, lint from the floor and dirt from the floor.
Yeah, it wouldn't hurt, yeah.
I think it's good every year to just go through this thing and check it carefully.
Yeah, and then maybe follow the ducts as far as you can. Sometimes it's not easy to get to it, but follow the ducts as far as you can. Make sure there's no holes in them, there's no rats living in them.
Absolutely.
And you could even fire the furnace up and maybe even feel the heat along the ducting to make sure it's getting an even heat.
One thing I don't like is to have cold spots in a rig, and too many times you have a cold spot and you have to supplement with an electric heater someplace, and especially in the bathroom. I don't, you know, it's cold weather, I want the bathroom to be toasty.
And keep in mind too, you could always put a little fan out in maybe a warmer section and blow it into the bathroom if you really have to.
But I think the better way to do it is let's make sure that the
efficient.
ducting is efficient and it's intact.
Absolutely, I agree.